The iPhone SE came out just recently and is essentially the small iPhone 8 with a faster processor. It starts at $400, and if you're not a fan of that older design, the next step up is this, the $600 iPhone XR. Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and today we're taking a look at the iPhone SE and the iPhone XR. How do they compare, and which should you get? These are two very different phones, but they do make up the cheapest options if you are looking for a new iPhone. Which one is better? Well, actually, that's a harder question to answer than you might expect. I mean, yes, the iPhone XR is more expensive and has the newer design, as well as much better battery life and is significantly bigger, but the iPhone SE has the better chipset with the A13 instead of the A12. Mind you, the A12 is no slouch, but the SE does have that extra step of power over the iPhone XR, which will likely mean at least an extra year of software support in the future. But besides that, the iPhone XR is indeed the better phone. That doesn't mean it's the better one for you though. You might prefer the older home button design, or like small phones, or the complete opposite. But I think for most people out there, it's gonna come down to what a lot of things seem to come down to: money. So which phone is the best bang for your buck? Is the iPhone XR worth the extra $200? That's the question we're hitting today. But first, let's back up here and start with the designs of these two phones. The iPhone SE again looks basically the same as the iPhone 8, but with the Apple logo centered. We have an aluminum frame and glass back, same as the bigger iPhone XR. The iPhone SE is noticeably smaller than the XR and has a Retina display sized at 4.7 inches. The XR, on the other hand, has a Retina display sized at 6.1 inches, so quite a bit bigger. If you're not okay with a small phone, the iPhone SE is not the one for you. But if you like being able to use your phone with only one hand, it's a no-brainer. There definitely is an audience that prefers smaller devices, and that's totally fair. On the bottom of these phones, we have the Lightning port and no headphone jack. Both phones are fast charging capable, although neither comes with a fast charger out of the box. They can also wirelessly charge, which is a nice feature, although I suppose not really a new one. But let's take this design talk up a notch. Yeah, I'm sorry, but we do need to talk about the home button versus notch. Both provide different biometric systems, Face ID coming with the notch, and Touch ID coming with the home button. Both ways honestly have their pros and cons, and while I personally prefer Face ID, I wouldn't blame you for disagreeing with me. Again, just comes to personal preference here, but there's no question the slimmer bezels on the XR really make the phone look a lot more modern. The iPhone SE incorporates a design we've, for better or worse, been seeing since 2014, which to some will make it feel old and stale. But to others, the SE is comfortable, familiar. This is very similar to what they've been using since their first smartphone, so they know how to operate it, or maybe they just enjoy the small display. On the other side of the coin, the iPhone XR to most looks much more fresh and modern, even if it does have a fairly big notch and decently thick bezels compared to some other newer smartphones. At the end of the day, go with your gut. If you want to stick with the home button, get the SE. That said, if you want a bigger display, get the XR, even if you are worried about the lack of home button. Trust me when I say newer iPhones are very intuitive and you'll get used to the new setup very quickly. But let's turn to one of the more interesting factors between these two phones, the cameras. This is a tough category to compare because while we do technically have superior hardware in the XR, we get very similar results. The iPhone SE uses the iPhone 8's 12 megapixel sensor, while the XR uses a better 12 megapixel sensor. However, thanks to the A13 chip, the iPhone SE is able to take advantage of superior photography tech, and because of that, I'd say these phones are about on par with each other in most photos. I do think the XR probably performs better in low light because of the bigger sensor, but neither phone does well in low light anyways. If you need good low light photos, go for the iPhone 11 or 11 Pro. They come with night mode and do a fantastic job. Actually, that's a pretty good point. If you want a better camera, go for the $700 iPhone 11. It is pricey, but not that much more than the XR, and it comes with an ultra-wide camera that gives you a wider view, which is really cool. But yeah, the SE and XR shared similar performance in most photos I took. Both phones do have portrait mode. Portrait mode can only take photos of people with these phones, which is a tad unfortunate, but it does a good job with those photos from my experience. I honestly can't tell much of a difference in how they're taken, although the XR's camera lens is a bit wider, so you get a little bit more in frame. The selfie cameras on both phones are 7 megapixels and take decent selfies that are about on par with each other and show off my quarantine hair quite well. We can also take portrait selfies. Interestingly, they're computed differently because the XR uses Face ID sensors while the SE just has the camera. You can tell the difference here. The SE photo might look better because my hair is in focus, but notice at the top that it isn't cut off very cleanly. The XR's photo is better with the cutting out, but the bokeh fall off is too drastic, so both my shirt and hair aren't in focus. Honestly, both of these photos look decent, but I'm surprised to say I think the SE does a better job. I think the average user would rather have some hard to notice mistakes and have everything in focus than more of a natural look, but not nearly as sharp. That A13 chip in the iPhone SE, along with the 3GB of RAM, is what makes this phone so darn good in value. While in the long run, this will make a difference over the iPhone XR, at the moment, the A12 chipset and 3GB of RAM in the XR produces nearly identical performance. You really wouldn't notice the SE being any faster in most day-to-day usage on iOS 13. That said, it is very possible the SE could get an extra year or even 2 of software support, so if you don't want to buy another phone for like 5 years, the SE is your better bet. Apple is really good with updates though, so I wouldn't worry about it too much if you're leaning towards getting the XR. So now for the tough conversation. Which iPhone is better value? Well, let me start by saying neither phone is bad value, so don't get that in your head. The iPhone 11 for $700 isn't bad value either, and I actually think the iPhone 11 is worth buying over the XR, but I know that's not an option for everyone. Straight up, the iPhone SE is the better value here. You get quite a bit for your extra $200, but for the average consumer who really doesn't care about the design and just uses their phone for a moderate amount of time in a day, the SE just makes more sense. Battery life is really the biggest pressing point for me, as the iPhone SE is quite a bit worse in that department. It should get you through the average day, but as time goes on and batteries degrade, it might start to get rough. But if you keep a charger nearby or don't use your phone a whole lot, the iPhone SE does make sense for a lot of people. That said, if you want those more premium features, the newer design, the better battery life, the iPhone XR is absolutely worth buying. Again, I do think the 11 is worth paying an extra $100 for, but if you wouldn't miss the ultra-wide camera, the XR is a good pickup at $600. Both these phones are worth buying as you'd expect, and what you get really depends on the price point you're looking at. $400, $600, which makes more sense for your financial situation, given what you really need a phone for. Of course, prices might not look as black and white as I'm making them out to be. The iPhone XR might not actually be $200 more than the iPhone SE for you from the carrier you're going through, but they're the numbers if you want to buy the phone outright, so that's why I use those prices whenever I'm talking about the phones. I do kind of wish there was an in-between phone at $500, preferably like an iPhone SE Plus, but there isn't. So if you want a big phone, you probably should go up to the iPhone XR, although it is possible we could see an SE Plus in the future. There have been rumors about it, possibly early 2021. Still though, the current SE and XR are both great, and I honestly think you'd be happy with either phone. The XR might be unsurprisingly better, but the SE really holds its own and presents the better value, so that is certainly worth commending. But with that, I think I'm pretty much done here. Do you have the iPhone SE or XR? Are you thinking about getting one of them? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video interesting or helpful, maybe hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. You can follow me over on Twitter and Instagram at 91_tech if you'd like to for some reason. And with that all being said, I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.